Right at this very moment, someone is leaving New Zealand. Young doctors, skilled engineers, experienced teachers are packing their bags. And where are they going? Almost all to the same place, Australia. New Zealand is a small nation of 5.3 million people. Yet more than 10% of its population, over 600,000 people, already live in Australia. Even more shocking is that more than half are in their 20s and 30s. New Zealand tries to fill this gap by accepting large numbers of immigrants. But ironically, even these immigrants end up leaving for Australia after just a few years. Why are people leaving this dream country? The answer lies in the unique structure of New Zealand's economy, hidden behind its beautiful landscapes. Let's begin the story of how the world's most livable country became a country people are leaving. New Zealand is the world's most isolated developed nation. Even from Australia, it takes 3 hours by plane. To reach Asia, Europe, or the Americas takes over 10 hours. The entire population is 5.3 million, similar to Sydney alone. This combination of a small market and extreme geographical isolation creates fatal weaknesses. Global corporations are reluctant to build factories here. The reason is simple. Production costs are high, transportation costs are even higher. Above all, the market is too small to achieve economies of scale. Imagine building a car factory targeting only 5.3 million people. Even if you export, transportation costs would crush competitiveness. New Zealand actually tried to develop an automotive industry once. From the 1920s, companies like Ford and Toyota set up operations here. But starting in the 2000s, they began withdrawing one by one. In 2016, the last factory closed. It was cheaper to make cars in Australia or Thailand and import them. This wasn't just an automotive problem. Almost all manufacturing met the same fate. Electronics, clothing, appliances all disappeared. New Zealand's industrial base steadily eroded. Inevitably, New Zealand concentrated on specific industries, things that could only be produced on this land: dairy farming, meat production, tourism, and real estate. This is both blessing and curse. Thanks to fertile land, New Zealand feeds itself easily, but simultaneously it's trapped in a structure that can't create diverse jobs. This fundamental limitation restricts the breadth of futures that young people can dream of. For youth wanting to become software engineers or biotech researchers, New Zealand is too small. The work you can do here is limited. The space to grow is even narrower. Geographical isolation creates another problem. New Zealand sits at the end of global supply chains. New technologies arrive slowly. Global trends take forever to reach. By the time Silicon Valley innovations arrive, the next generation has already emerged elsewhere. This time lag is fatal for young talent. They want to work on the world's front lines. But New Zealand can't be that stage. The structural disadvantage of distance compounds year after year. This is where Australia enters as a giant magnet. New Zealand's economy can be summed up in 2 words: agriculture and real estate. This country has the world's most efficient dairy farming system. Fertile pastures and mild climate make productivity world-class. Thanks to highly mechanized systems, enormous quantities are produced with minimal labor. New Zealand feeds over 20 times its own population. It's an agricultural powerhouse. But there's a trap. High productivity means low labor requirements. Agriculture accounts for significant GDP, but employs only 6% of the workforce. In the 1960s, it was over 15%. Where do the remaining 94% work? They go to cities, and cities don't have industries as productive as agriculture. Manufacturing collapsed. High-tech is minimal. Services are scarce. Tourism once looked like hope, but it has severe seasonal fluctuations and low wages. When COVID-19 hit in 2020, tourism virtually collapsed. Tens of thousands lost jobs. So what are the urban jobs? Houses, real estate brokerage, construction, housing finance, legal services, insurance. House-related industries account for nearly half the economy. New Zealand builds houses, sells houses, rents houses, manages houses. Most downtown Auckland offices are filled with real estate businesses. Being a real estate agent is one of the most popular professions. Statistics prove this. Over 70% of household assets are tied up in real estate. This far exceeds the developed country average of 50%. More than 60% of bank loans are home mortgages. New business loans account for less than 10%. Capital isn't flowing to productive industries, but only to real estate. The problem is this structure is self-reinforcing. When prices rise, more people flock to real estate. Competition intensifies, marketing sophisticates, prices rise further. Simultaneously, capital and manpower for other industries steadily decrease. When a young engineer tries to start a startup, banks demand a house as collateral. Without a house, you can't even start a business. This is the vicious cycle New Zealand is trapped in. An economy built on cows and houses is stable but not dynamic. It's prosperous but limited in opportunity. Agriculture makes money but doesn't employ people. Real estate employs people but doesn't create value. In between, young people can't find their place. The structural imbalance only deepens. New Zealand's house prices are among the world's highest relative to income. Auckland's average home price exceeds 10 times the median income. London is about 8 times, Sydney 9, Tokyo 7. New Zealand has low population density and plenty of land. So why are houses so expensive? Let's look at supply first. New Zealand has strict land use regulations. City boundaries are clearly defined. Development outside them is nearly impossible. Environmental protection effectively blocks urban expansion. New development projects require dozens of permits. Resident consent and environmental assessments are mandatory. Project approval takes an average of 2-3 years. The construction process is also problematic. New Zealand suffers from chronic worker shortages. Skilled carpenters, plumbers, electricians are hard to find. Their wages keep rising. Building materials are mostly imported, making them expensive. Add transportation costs, and they become even pricier. New Zealand's strict earthquake-resistant codes drive up costs further. The result is new homes are built slowly and expensively. Supply can't keep up with demand. The demand side is more complex. New Zealanders prefer real estate as investment. Other options are limited. The stock market is small and volatile. Bond yields are low. Overseas investments carry currency risk. Furthermore, New Zealand has no capital gains tax. If house prices rise, profits are tax-free. People with capital buy second and third homes. Statistics show about 40% of housing is investment property. This ratio keeps increasing. Most go to rental, but rent is crushingly expensive. Young people spend over half their salary on housing. To rent a one-bedroom in Auckland costs $500–600 weekly. That's $2,000–2,400 monthly. With entry-level salaries averaging $3,500, after taxes, you survive on what's left after rent. The government banned foreign purchases in 2018, but the effect was minimal. Foreign purchases were only 3% to begin with. Australians weren't subject to the ban anyway. In 2021, investor tax benefits were reduced. In 2025, rental regulations were strengthened. But these haven't broken the rising trend. The structural problems run too deep. Young New Zealanders can't win in this system. They spend their 20s repaying student loans, their 30s saving for deposits. By their 40s, they might barely afford a first home. Even that's only possible with parental support. The rest spend lives paying rent, or they leave. By this point, they realize starting life here is too late, too expensive, too unfair. Houses in Sydney and Melbourne cost more than Auckland. Yet young New Zealanders keep going to Australia. In 2025 alone, over 50,000 moved there. This doesn't follow simple economic logic. If housing costs were the problem, they'd go somewhere cheaper. But reality is the opposite. Understanding New Zealand's job structure makes this clear. Only essential industries exist here. Dairy, tourism, retail, local finance, construction, education, healthcare. If you're a farmer or elementary teacher, New Zealand works. But if you dream of being a data scientist or aerospace engineer, options are extremely limited. New Zealand has only a handful of listed tech companies, not a single global investment bank. Some biotech companies exist, but most are small startups. Rocket Lab basically is the aerospace industry. When young professionals try to build careers, options are scarce. In contrast, Australia has 26 million people. Its economy is 5 times larger than New Zealand's. Sydney and Melbourne are the Asia-Pacific's finance, technology, research hubs. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple have regional headquarters there. Global investment banks operate actively. Hundreds of universities and research institutes thrive. Above all, industries are diverse: mining, manufacturing, finance, technology, education, healthcare, law, media. High-skilled jobs exist in nearly every field. The wage gap is also substantial. For the same position and experience, you earn 20 to 30% more in Australia. An IT developer earning $80,000 in New Zealand could earn $120,000 in Australia. The same applies for nurses, teachers, engineers. It's not just higher amounts. Promotion opportunities, project scale, career development potential all favor Australia overwhelmingly. For young New Zealanders, moving to Australia isn't immigration. It's like provincial Korean youth moving to Seoul. No language barrier, no visa barrier, no cultural barrier. Just board a plane and 3 hours later, 5 times the opportunity unfolds. Many friends have already gone. Social media constantly shares success stories from Australia. Housing costs aren't the issue. In New Zealand, you have nothing to do, even with a house. In Australia, you have endless opportunities without a house. Young people choose long-term career development over short-term housing costs. Renting in Sydney costs similar to Auckland, but the value of experience and network you build there is incomparably greater. This is the truth behind leaving for a more expensive country. The relationship between New Zealand and Australia goes beyond simple friendship. The 1973 Trans-Tasman travel arrangement granted citizens freedom of movement, nearly equivalent to the EU level. New Zealanders can enter Australia without visas, reside and work. They can buy houses, send children to school, receive medical benefits. The Australian government even provides student loans to New Zealand students. This system was mutually beneficial in the 1970s. The two countries' economic sizes were similar. Per capita GDP was nearly equal. Population movement was active in both directions. When New Zealanders went to Australia, Australians came to New Zealand. Overall balance was maintained. Both governments judged this agreement beneficial to both countries. But the situation has completely changed over 50 years. Australia experienced a mining boom from the 1980s. In the 2000s, it received enormous benefits from China's growth. Exports of iron ore, coal, natural gas exploded. This money led to urban development and industrial diversification. Meanwhile, New Zealand remained dependent on agriculture and tourism. Economic growth far lagged behind. Currently, Australia's economy is about 5 times New Zealand's size. Per capita GDP is approximately $65,000 in Australia versus $50,000 in New Zealand. That's a roughly 30% difference. The average wage gap is even larger. Naturally, population movement became one-directional. Since the 2000s, annual net migration overwhelmingly favors Australia. The imbalance only grows with time. Currently, about 700,000 people of New Zealand origin live in Australia. This represents 13% of New Zealand's entire population. If they all lived in New Zealand, the population would exceed 6 million. Conversely, only about 70,000 Australians live in New Zealand. That's less than 0.3% of Australia's population. Moreover, most moving from Australia are retirees or wealthy individuals. They come to enjoy New Zealand's peacefulness and beauty. They do little economic activity, living on pensions or asset income. Conversely, people moving to Australia are mostly in their 20s, 40s. Highly educated individuals, doctors, nurses, engineers, IT professionals, teachers leave in droves. The brain drain is systematic and relentless. The New Zealand government cannot change this situation. Abolishing or restricting the Trans-Tasman Agreement is politically impossible. Polls show over 80% of New Zealanders support this system. Many have family or friends in Australia. They want the option to go themselves someday. Moreover, relations with Australia are essential in diplomatic, security, economic aspects. Ultimately, New Zealand can only watch as its most talented people flow out. This isn't about agreements but economic laws. Just as water flows from high to low, talent flows from small markets to large. Between New Zealand and Australia, there's no dam. The flow continues ceaselessly year after year. New Zealand suffers from chronic labor shortages. Nurses, construction workers, IT professionals, engineers are lacking. According to a 2025 government report, New Zealand needs at least 80,000 skilled workers. Hospitals close beds because they can't find nurses. Construction sites delay work due to labor shortages. Schools increase class sizes due to teacher shortages. The crisis is visible everywhere. The government pursues aggressive immigration policies to solve this. It expands skilled migration visas, lengthens essential occupation lists. International students easily get post-graduation work visas. After working for a period, they can apply for permanent residence. As a result, New Zealand accepts 60,000 immigrants annually. Per capita, it's among the highest rates worldwide. But something ironic happens. Even immigrants who arrive leave for Australia after a few years. Statistics show about 30 to 40% of skilled immigrants re-migrate to Australia within 5 years. The scenario is similar. An Indian software developer gets New Zealand permanent residence. For the first 2-3 years, he works at a small Auckland company. Life seems stable at first, but reality soon becomes clear. Projects are small scale, the technology stack isn't cutting edge. Career development opportunities are limited. Salary isn't as high as expected. And from colleagues, he learns crucial information. With New Zealand permanent residence, you can work freely in Australia. That's the key insight. He sends resumes to Sydney companies online. Soon, several respond. He flies to Sydney for interviews. The scale is different. Offices are large and modern. Team sizes are 3-4 times larger. Technologies used are latest. Projects handled are international. The contrast is stark. He receives a salary offer 40% higher than New Zealand. Benefits are better too. There's no reason to hesitate. He returns to Auckland to pack. 3 months later, he starts a new life in Sydney. This pattern isn't just IT. Doctors seek better facilities and higher salaries in Australia. Nurses discover Australian hospitals have much better working conditions. Engineers want Australia's large-scale infrastructure projects. Accountants prefer the Australian market where global companies concentrate. Highly skilled immigrants that New Zealand desperately needs leave one by one. The pipeline keeps draining. New Zealand has effectively become Australia's back door. People who find Australian immigration difficult use New Zealand as a stopover. Online forums overflow with posts sharing this strategy. Getting New Zealand permanent residence is easier than Australia. Once you have it, going to Australia is simple. The information spreads widely among immigrant communities. This is a double blow to New Zealand. First, administrative costs and settlement support expenses are wasted. Resources invested in English education, job training, social integration ultimately transfer to Australia. Second, when immigrants leave, labor gaps reappear. The government must accept more immigrants. Many again go to Australia. The vicious cycle repeats endlessly. What remains are those who can't leave or choose not to. Retirement immigrants, family immigrants, low-skilled workers, and a minority who value New Zealand's quality of life above all. The quality of human capital gradually declines. Economic dynamism falls. This isn't simple population outflow. It's a structural crisis where the nation's future systematically drains away. The New Zealand government knows about this problem. Every government has announced policies to stop population outflow. But finding fundamental solutions is nearly impossible. This problem can't be solved by a single policy. 4 dilemmas are intertwined. The first dilemma is the relationship with Australia. Over 700,000 New Zealanders have already settled there. Many have acquired Australian citizenship. They have children born and raised in Australia. They form a massive network connecting the two countries. If New Zealand tried to restrict the Trans-Tasman agreement, it would face enormous backlash from them and their families. The political cost would be immense. It's also politically impossible for other reasons. Australia is New Zealand's most important ally and largest trading partner. The two countries cooperate closely on security. Unilaterally abolishing or restricting the agreement could cause diplomatic disaster. Moreover, New Zealand citizens overwhelmingly support this system. They want the option to go to Australia someday. No politician can touch this sacred cow. The second dilemma is industrial structure. Attracting new industries to New Zealand isn't easy. The market is small, location unfavorable, transportation expensive. Even if the government offers tax breaks or subsidies, there are limits. You might ask about small, successful countries like Singapore or Ireland, but they're geographically adjacent to major markets. Singapore sits at Asia's crossroads. Ireland is right next to massive European markets. New Zealand is far from everywhere in the world. Geographic reality can't be changed. Even trying to attract high-tech companies, the talent pool is insufficient. University graduates have already left for Australia or are preparing to leave. Even if companies bring talent from abroad, they too go to Australia. This is a chicken and egg problem. Talent leaves because there's no industry. Industry can't be attracted because there's no talent. Breaking this cycle is very difficult. The third dilemma is real estate. Half of New Zealand's economy relates to housing. This isn't just a ratio, but hundreds of thousands of jobs. Real estate agents, construction workers, finance staff, lawyers, appraisers. Countless people depend on this industry for livelihoods. What if the government drastically lowered house prices through strong regulations? Short-term economic recession would come. Construction would shrink, finance would take a hit, consumption would decrease. When house price drops reduce household assets, people close their wallets. GDP falls, unemployment rises. This is a politically dangerous choice. It could lose elections. Conversely, keeping house prices as they are means young people's discontent continues accumulating. Population outflow accelerates. Either choice brings pain. There's no easy way out. The fourth dilemma is immigration policy. Accepting more immigrants temporarily alleviates labor shortages. Hospitals get nurses, construction sites get workers, schools get teachers. The immediate crisis is resolved. But simultaneously, housing demand explodes. Immigrants need houses too. The more who come, the higher prices rise. Infrastructure comes under strain. Roads, schools, hospitals, public transportation all need more investment. Native residents' backlash grows. Complaints that jobs go to foreigners. Cultural conflicts emerge. Welfare distribution issues surface. Political tensions rise. Conversely, restricting immigration paralyzes hospitals and construction sites immediately. Even remaining services could collapse. The healthcare system would be at risk. Construction projects would halt. Ultimately, New Zealand is trapped where choosing either option can't solve the problem. It's a classic policy trilemma. This isn't policy failure but structural limitations. The constraints are built into the system itself. No easy solutions exist. The country faces an impossible choice at every turn. It sounds desperate, but New Zealand still has cards to play. The strengths this country possesses may not show immediately, but they could be very powerful long-term. First, national debt is very low. Government debt to GDP is under 40%. That's among the lowest levels in developed countries. This means, if necessary, New Zealand has room to invest massively in infrastructure, education, and industry attraction through fiscal spending. During the pandemic, New Zealand swiftly defended the economy through fiscal support. It poured over 10% of GDP into benefits and subsidies. Yet national debt remains at manageable levels. While other countries struggle with debt burdens, New Zealand has fiscal capacity. This is both crisis response capability and future investment capacity. Second, New Zealand's brand value remains powerful. Clean nature, political stability, low corruption, high transparency. These remain attractive to wealthy individuals and companies worldwide. In Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, New Zealand always ranks in the top 3. In the World Bank's Business Environment Rankings, it's also top tier. This isn't just image, but real competitiveness. After the pandemic, interest from wealthy people wanting to move surged. Silicon Valley billionaires, Wall Street financiers, European entrepreneurs. They see New Zealand as a safe haven. They seek places far from political chaos, social unrest, climate change. New Zealand can attract these high-net-worth individuals to secure tax revenue and draw investment. Third is the possibility of return migration. New Zealanders who built careers abroad increasingly return home. In their 40s, 50s, they choose New Zealand for children's education, safe environment, relaxed lifestyle. They want to escape intense competition in Sydney or London, long commutes and high stress, the rat race. Importantly, they don't return empty-handed. They bring experience gained overseas, global networks, substantial capital. Some start startups, some do consulting, some enter real estate or investment. If the government actively supports them, they could become important catalysts for New Zealand's economy. Many successful tech companies were founded by returnees from abroad. Fourth is technology industry potential. New Zealand already shows world-class competitiveness in some areas. In film special effects, Weta Digital is a regular partner for Hollywood blockbusters. Lord of the Rings and Avatar showcased New Zealand's capabilities. In software development, companies like Xero and Solo succeeded globally. In agricultural technology, innovation happens through precision agriculture and biotechnology. In industries where physical location matters less, New Zealand can compete adequately, especially as remote work becomes normalized. New Zealand's time zone and environment could become advantages. A time zone covering European and American markets simultaneously, a workforce speaking English natively, stable internet infrastructure. These are genuine competitive advantages. The key is concentrated investment in these areas and developing talent. Being a small country means it can pivot quickly. That's a hidden strength. While large nations respond slowly due to massive bureaucracy, New Zealand can be nimble. It can swiftly change policies and try new paths. The question is political will. Whether this country can have the courage to transition from a real estate-centered economy to an innovation-centered economy. That's the real test ahead. New Zealand is a beautiful country, a place with clean air, open nature, safe streets, kind people. Many dream of this place, but ironically, this beauty has created economic vulnerability. Within a structure of small population, distant location, limited industries, New Zealand is losing people. What New Zealand is losing now isn't land, resources, or money, it's people. Especially the young, highly skilled workers who should be responsible for the future. They're not leaving because New Zealand is bad, simply because opportunities are limited. And because right next door sits Australia, a giant magnet. The pull is irresistible for ambitious youth, but this isn't an irreversible catastrophe. New Zealand still has strong finances, high trust, excellent brand value. The question is how this country can evolve from the most livable country to one that's also great to work in. Whether it can create opportunity, not housing costs, industry, not real estate, dynamism, not just stability. These are the real challenges ahead. Whether New Zealand can hold on to its young generation remains uncertain. But this question isn't just New Zealand's problem. It's a common challenge for small developed nations, peripheral economies, all regions where young people leave. Ultimately, the winners will be places that value people most and provide the most abundant opportunities. That's the lesson of New Zealand's exodus. Today we explored New Zealand's great exodus and the structural forces driving it. But what about other countries? How does Canada prevent brain drain? Why do people flock to Singapore despite it being a small nation? In the next video, we'll analyze the strategies of countries taking the opposite path from New Zealand. If you found this deep economic analysis valuable, please support us with a subscribe and like. Your engagement is what drives us to create better content.